Welcome to Murder.
And everything else.
My name is Joy.
And my name is Cheryl. And Joy and I are two very old friends talking about murder and everything else.
We're not that old, though.
Well, we kind of are. I'm almost 60. No, hey, no offense to people that are older than 60, but I guess,
Age is just a number.
Shut up. I hate when people say that. My response is like, well, it's a really big number now. No, I think before, like, 30s was considered middle age, maybe even 40s, but now I think it's creeping up to 50s. But I'm definitely not middle age because I'm at higher end of 50s.
I feel like that was back when, like, women were having babies at like 15 or 16, so you were dead by like 55.
Yes.
But
yeah,
like,
so
people are living to be like 95, 98. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah,
like with good healthcare and healthy living and all the medications you need, people can live a really long time.
Yeah, I don't see myself living that long. I can barely walk. I've had knee problems. I don't even know if I want to live that long because I just feel like it's going to be riddled with health issues, and that's no way to live. I want it short and sweet.
Well, you can get a knee replacement.
Yeah, that sounds like fun too. But yeah, I know. I know there's all these, there's all these techniques and all this medicine and medical advancements and all that jazz, but I don't know. We'll see. Anyway,
you heard it here first, people.
Yeah,
medical medicine, a lot of it out there. All right, we're gonna roll right into we're gonna roll right into disclaimers. A quick reminder that this podcast is not for the little folk.
Yeah, although we do have two 17-year-olds now. So they're not quite adults.
Oh no. Wait till we get to our shout outs.
Oh,
you're gonna be amazed.
Okay.
I have all kind of data analytics to talk about.
All right. Okay, I can't wait. Well, but getting back to the disclaimer, I do want to say that in all seriousness, this episode is going to be about suicide. So if this is triggering for you, or you just don't want to hear about this very, very tough subject, please be warned.
On that note, let's go into our highs and lows. You want to take the first high and low?
Of course I do. So my low is, I've started this new job, and I'm not sure if I've already said this, so if I have, please bear with me. But so it's a remote job, fully remote, which I love. But the training was at the office, which is very far away. Remember the panic attack on the freeway, yada yada. So the first day that I showed up, I was expecting me to be like the grandma of the group, and that would be just be a bunch of 20-something-year-olds. No offense to them, but that's what I pictured. And instead, there were 4 other people. 2 were in their 20s, but the other 2 were in their 50s. Linda and Craig. Hey, shout out to you guys if you're listening. And Craig is the same age as me, 58. So it was refreshing that I could not believe that I had people of the same age in this class. And we're all kind of at the same, point where it was like we were doing something else and we needed to make more money or whatever it was, right? And so it was just wonderful. And we bonded. And once we got home and started working from home, we would text each other all day. We wouldn't chat on the work computer because they were watching like Big Brother. So we would just be whatever, trash talking and just joking around and just keeping us, just keeping that connection because we were no longer physically together. And so it was really, it is still really great. However, Linda already jumped ship because the job is kind of a headache. I ended my day in tears last night because it was so stressful. And we are just too old for this. I last night, Joy, I literally thought my chest was going to just burst from stress. If I had taken my blood pressure, it would have been through the roof. I had to really like, I had to try to calm myself down because it was so stressful. So Linda
Oh
already jumped
man.
ship, and the day that she jumped ship, the day before she texted our manager and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, this job is not for me." The day before that, she just did a no call, no show. She texted us and she goes, "I woke up late. I'm lying on the couch right now. They don't even know that I'm not off." And then
Oh.
halfway through the day, she goes, "Oh, our manager just texted me to see what was going on." Because literally, if they don't check every morning, they can't tell because you're not physically there, so they can't see you walk in. So several hours before they realized she wasn't at work. So
Right.
and that was it. She was like, "I'm not doing this." And so I got to tell you, the day that she told us that I'm done. And she got another job like right away. It was a different type of job, it wasn't remote, but I was really seriously bummed. Just really,
Mhm.
really sad that day. And maybe it's because I was a little envious that I wasn't the first to leave. Like I'm going to be the last one here. There might have been some of that,
Right.
but I genuinely felt sad because we were all like, "Oh, we'll always be friends." But I know that it's different when you're actually working with people. You just have that connection, and then once the job is over or you leave or whatever,
Mhm.
you may still contact once in a while to see how you're doing. But when you don't have um that common thing that's keeping you together, it's going to change. It is. And I really
Right.
love these guys, and man, I was really, really bummed that day, really bummed. I couldn't believe how bummed I
Aw.
was. But yeah, so that was my low. Hopefully I won't have to be doing this for very much longer. But anyway, so my high is, and I'm not trying to, I'm very humble. Okay. This might not sound like a humble story, but it was more shock. And Kevin too, he said he could not believe it. But so Kevin went to happy hour with a friend, and the friend's son is in college, and he's a film student. And so his son wants to do a something about Bollywood, and so the his father was talking to one of the son's friends from school, and she's Indian, and she's 20. Okay, keep that in mind. She's Indian, and she's 20. She's born. She's from here. She lived here. I think she was born here. She lived here. She was born here. I don't know if her parents are from India. Anyway, she's 20 now. So his friend's talking to her about this Bollywood dance and all of that. And he says, "Oh, I have a friend," and he's talking about Kevin, whose wife used to be a dancer. And he says her name was Cheryl. Well, her maiden name was Yamaguchi, Cheryl Yamaguchi. And this 20-year-old girl goes, "Oh, you mean Cheryl Yamaguchi from Fame?"
Wow.
And I'm like, "Huh." I'm like
Did,
speechless now because
did you
she's
get goosebumps?
I did not. I was just like speechless. But Kevin said he did, and he said his friend did too. They both got goosebumps. Like, that is so bizarre. But maybe because she studied dance, she went back and looked at very old footage, like we do now. There was a time when you wanted to go back and study the history of dance or look at old, classic dances and things like that. You'd go back to Gene Kelly days, right? Um, so
You know what
maybe
would have been,
she's
you know what would have been even crazier if she said, "Oh, you mean Nurse Anderson from The Bold and the Beautiful?"
okay, everybody. I have to let you in on the joke. So I had a one or two lines on Bold and the Beautiful. I don't even know if any, if
Reoccurring nurse.
was it reoccur. I think I had two.
Yeah,
Oh, they asked me.
you were reoccurring. One
Remember that?
time you were at the when they check into the
Yes,
clinic,
yes, yes,
and
yes.
another time you like popped into the room.
Oh my God, Joy!
Yeah.
Talking about
Girl, I
oh,
know my
Joy.
bold and beautiful.
Oh, Joy, that is incredible that you remember that. Yes,
I
so
told
everyone.
you I'm the fan club president. Anyone else can be a member. I'm the president.
Well, Well, yeah, it's so funny because when I got that job, you guys, everybody listening, Joy would call me and recite my lines. It's down the hall and to the left. Remember that? It's down
Yeah,
the hall and to the left.
but I thought it was the right.
Well, I you probably you probably remember it better than me, but you were so funny. Anyway, isn't that incredible? She's 20. Like
That's amazing.
yeah, so anyway, that was kind of fun. I mean, maybe or
That
maybe
is
she's
that is a huge high.
yeah, that
I
well, it's
like
just
that.
it's very strange because then you just want to picture like how how was she watching reruns of Fame? I mean, like I don't even know. I don't even think it's you know what? There was one time when I was living in Oregon, I woke up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. and I turned on the TV and decided to clean. I don't know what that part of me has long been
Were
gone. I won't
Wait,
clean
what? I was
anything.
like, were you drinking? What's up?
No. Um, should have been. But I got up, I started cleaning, had to turn the TV on, and there was an episode of Fame on. Do you know how weird and surreal that was? To
That's
just
crazy.
yeah random. So I don't know if she watched rerun. Well, again, I don't think it's being reran anywhere. But anyway, that
Well,
is
cuz they
weird.
did a new Fame. But I will say I have been asked multiple times since we started this podcast who Cheryl is, and I always say, "Oh, Cheryl, she was on Fame," and they go, "The Debbie Allen Fame or the new Fame?" I'm like, "Oh, somebody's paying attention," and I'm always like, "Oh, gee, she was on the Debbie
Yeah.
Allen
Oh,
Fame."
gee,
So
that's
there.
right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Anyway, that's a pretty cool story. So I just had to share that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I just have to say that I love this high and low. One, it makes us weed down like the shitty stuff that happens in a week or in a month or in a year. So you get to pick one instead of like all the little gripes that you have along the way. Cause like any day there's going to be 50 gripes that you're just like, ugh, this annoyed me.
Right.
So I love that it's a high or a low and that
Well,
we have to narrow it down.
sometimes I have a hard time choosing because I have a lot of lows. Sometimes I'm searching for a high, I'm not gonna lie.
That's
But you're
hilarious.
right. You know what? You're absolutely right. It makes you look back at the week, and it really does make you put things in perspective.
Mhm.
And it might be something small that could be a high, you know?
Yep,
So yeah, it's actually very therapeutic. I
it
recommend it
is.
to everyone out there.
It helps prioritize your misery. That's what it does.
Exactly. Prioritizing your misery, our next episode. Um,
Yep.
okay, so what's your high and low?
Well, I have to say that uh we've been so busy because one of my kids is in a does volleyball and she had her last volleyball tournament last weekend and it was a little sigh of relief because we've been on the road, it's been very expensive, it's very time consuming, there's a lot of like things that we have to logistics we have to work out. I've had a slew of car problems. So having it be her last tournament was a little bit of a sigh of relief just cuz I needed a break. I like this weekend I'm still wearing, what looks like pajamas and I've already left the house in them, but I'm, I've hunkered down for the rest of the day. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not doing anything that requires me to look presentable. So
That's
it's
wonderful.
just, yeah, it's just it's a lot. But and that's the high, but in saying that, I also have to say that it's also my low because in going to all these tournaments and sitting through the games and we got to meet all these new parents and kids and interact with them and we saw them on a regular basis and you know they're all really fun people and they're all fun to talk to and they're all there for the same reasons, which is to support their kids and to support their kids playing a sport. And they were just such fun people, and it was so great to get to know them.
Mhm.
And so we're going to miss seeing them every weekend and every week at practice. And also, you know, Gabe always says that whenever I make new friends, I always have opportunity to like, use my material on them, and so I'm gonna miss like my newfound audience members. So that's always,
But
always a bummer.
I have no doubt that you will acquire a new group of
Yeah,
audience members. But hey,
that's
that's the
great.
same kind of the same thing with my coworkers. Like you know that you could probably still keep in touch by text and calls and maybe even get together once in a while, but it's not the same as
Yeah.
going there every week and having that thing in common. So I get it.
Yeah, and you know how busy you are. If you meet people, I mean, like one of the moms said, we need to get together and have like a weekly or monthly lunch. And I was like, that's a great idea. But you know how busy you get. It's like if you
Hmm.
don't actually put it on your calendar, time goes by. And then next thing you know, it's 9 months from now and we're going to start this season all over again. So, I mean, we'll see what ends up happening, but it was just such a fun time. It was great to be able to like support our kids, but also like really have fun doing it because we all got along and everybody was super kick ass and awesome.
Yeah.
And funny, like people like to crack jokes and have a good time. And, it made it that much more fun because, sports sometimes can be very, very competitive and very stressful. And if you're not always winning, you have to deal with like kind of the heaviness of losing. And sometimes, we would have days where we felt like it was lose, 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 lose. So it's good to meet a group of people that can like help lift you up and help lift each other up that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't you
Yeah.
find that, I mean, well, look at us. We became very good friends from meeting at work, but that doesn't always happen. Like you're like, okay, we'll get together, and then it just there's certain groups that you just don't have that long standing connection with, right? So 9 months down the
Yeah.
road, you're like, yeah, I don't really feel like getting together with
Yeah,
them.
it's true. But also, I just have to say, it's also because I kind of crawled up your ass and wouldn't let go. Because remember, I used to come in to wherever you were working, and I remember I would get on the chair and on my knees and spin the chair around, and you'd turn around and you'd be like, "You're so funny." And I'd be like, "What are we all doing this weekend?" And then Eric would be like, "Oh, I'm going to go home. I'm going to do yard work." Wah, wah, wah. And of course, I wasn't in the yard work frame of mind because I was a single girl. And then, Jenny would be like, "Oh, I'm going to take my kids down to the waterfront." Wah, wah. And I was like, I didn't have any kids. And I'd look at you and I'd be like, "What are you doing this weekend?" And you'd be like, "Oh, yeah, I'm just gonna sleep and walk the dog and sleep some more, and then maybe we'll go eat somewhere." And I'd be like, "You want to go dancing?" And you'd be like, "No, I don't want to go dancing." I'd be like, "Want to go to a party?" And you'd be like, "No, I don't want to go to a party." And I would do that every freaking week. Every
Yeah.
Friday, I'd like come in, climb up on the chair, spin it around in circles, and be like, "What are you guys doing this weekend?" You would always say the same. You'd be like, "You're so funny." Then you would never commit to like hanging out or doing something. And
No.
I was like relentless. I was like that little kid that like, like Dennis the Menace, Mr. Wilson is always trying to get him off the lawn. And he always, I just pop right back in there. And you notice I was never asking like Eric what he wanted to do for the weekend, or Janine what she wanted to do for the weekend, or Kathy what she wanted to do for the. I was like, Cheryl, what do you want to do for the weekend? Finally, I broke you down. You're
You
like,
broke me
fine.
down. You broke.
You're like,
This
all
is
right, let's
true.
get together and watch that awful movie that you've been talking about like
No.
ad nauseum. And then I show up with like 50 movies, VHS, by the way. So that's dating us a little bit. All these VHS tapes of like, Pride and Prejudice and like A Room with a View and Sense and Sensibility. And Cheryl's like, "Ugh."
Oh my God. No, you know what? Okay, full disclosure, Joy is absolutely right. Here I am making it sound like, yeah, some friendships, I probably would never have kept in touch with anybody at
It's
work
true.
had they
It's
not
totally
stalked me.
true.
It's, I have to admit, everyone, that it is true.
It's true.
Um, because well, Joy used to fraternize with the subordinates. You know how that was not, you're not, I don't even know if that's a thing now in the workplace, but you know how managers are not supposed to like, they weren't supposed to fraternize with the lower, the people that report to them, right? But Joy, if there's a rule, Joy disregards it. So, um,
No,
that's
no, no, back up. If there's a rule, I make a new rule.
exactly. Yep. She makes a new rule that trumps the real rule. But anyway, so you would hang out with them and be like, I don't want to see these people. I like them a lot, but I see them all freaking week. I don't want to see them on the weekends. So that was part of the problem. But also that is my general makeup.
It's
I
true.
take I am a slow simmer with friends because once you once you cross that line to we're besties now, it's hard to come back. It's, you know what I mean? I rather
It's true.
go
And also
slow.
we're going to have to do an episode on this, but we're going to have to do one on like, like friendships because I mean, we've talked about it. There are some crazy freaks out there that you
Hmm.
do not want to be friends with,
No, like,
or that you have been friends with and you're like, I'm going in this direction, you're going in that direction. I
yeah,
mean,
and
everybody's got a different, toolbox that they're working with. Some of the
exactly.
toolboxes are not a good fit.
No, I would say it probably took about 2 years. Is that right? I feel like it was about 2 years before we really started hanging out because I
Well,
wanted.
what so I don't know what movie this is from. Gabe always knows like every movie and what the line's from, but it's like a guy and a girl. She keeps rejecting him, and at the end of like her rejecting him, he's all, so you're saying there's a chance. So I feel like that, like, you're all 2 years. Anyone else in their right mind would have been like, fuck this noise. I'm not hanging out over here waiting for homegirl to want to hang out. Instead, here's Joy like a little like Labrador retriever, like, so you're saying there's a chance, like 2 years from now, we're gonna hang out.
You're like, you don't want to hang out with people at work, and I work with you, but you're saying there's a chance. Um, so
Right.
it's so funny because I think it took a really long time, but I was just I was like giving, like, I had to wait. Is there a red flag that's gonna pop up anywhere along this way? And then there's like statute of limitations ran out. I was like, all
Oh
right, she's
my
okay. No,
god.
truth be told, Joy and I used to hang out. We started hanging out at lunch, and that became really fun because we used to go on
Yeah.
shopping sprees.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's because I was so much fun, right? Just
yes,
say it.
no, Joy. I already spent half a episode, a previous episode, talking about how much fun she made that department. We had a Christmas party. This is what really sticks out in my mind, and it's like a moment that I really felt like, man. Well, I already knew you were cool, but I was like, we were having so much fun. Joy actually got approval to have, or did you? Were you making up your own rules? Um, we had this customer service department's Christmas party in the call center. And Joy and I, before the party, a few days or I don't know when, we decorated. And I remember standing up, getting on your shoulder to hang the garland. Do you remember that?
I don't.
Oh my God. And I was like, this is so cool. Yeah, I remember getting up because I couldn't reach it. And I got up and hung the garland. And yeah, it was just, you were fun. I knew that, but I just was, I don't know. It's just the way I am. So yeah, it's not, I have to admit, it wasn't like it happened like that naturally. But
Right?
yeah, but anyway,
That's
getting off
awesome.
track. You're talking about your highs and lows, and I just went off
Yeah.
into tangent.
Well, we're actually gonna roll into our shout outs. And I just have to say, uh, going over our audience, we have added the countries of Ireland and Canada to our listeners.
Amazing.
So we are international now,
That is amazing. I'm so
right?
thrilled.
Right? So 99% of our listeners come from the United States, and the rest of our listenership comes from Ireland and Canada. So shout out to our Irish and Canadian listeners. Thank you so much and keep
Yes.
listening.
Thank
Um,
you.
Also, just by way of analytics, another little blurb on analytics, the 0 to 17 age group makes up 6% of our listenership, which is amazing because
It was
that is
2% a couple weeks
literally,
ago.
yeah, that is literally the demographic that in our disclaimers we say should be careful listening
Should
because
not
it's
be
not for
listening.
kids.
Yeah.
But that is pretty exciting to think that there are teenagers out there listening to us. This category, by the way, has overtaken the 18 to 22 age group, the 23 to 27 age group, and the 35 to 44 age group.
What?
Yeah. So I just think that's so freaking cool.
That
Anywho,
is really cool. So it's either really young or really old. Nowhere, no, nowhere
right.
in between.
Well, the largest age group is 45 to 59. The second one is 28 to 34. The third is 60 and over, and then the fourth coming in at 6% is 0 to 17. So
Wow.
anyway, I just think that I love I know I talked about it before, but I took statistics in my 50s and I just love statistics. I think it's so fascinating. But
That
anyway,
is really cool. Although I want to, I have said this before, we don't know what's happening between the 0 to 17 age. I've told you it could be a baby, a mother giving the
that's
baby,
right.
handing the baby the phone because they're trying to have a nice dinner out, and the baby's over there like
That's
subscribing to our
right.
podcast.
That's right. And ordering like $3,000 worth of merchandise on Amazon.
Yeah, you told me about that story. That's incredible. Oh
Well,
man.
guys, today we're going to be turning back around to murder, and Cheryl has prepared a fascinating and thought provoking and informational podcast. So buckle up and take it away, Cheryl.
Okay, well, interesting that you introduced it as murder because uh, we'll see. We'll see. We'll go through this and we'll see if it was murder. Okay, so this material I got from the documentary on HBO. It actually, I don't have HBO, so I found it on YouTube for anybody that wants to watch it. Someone posted both episodes. It was a two-part series, and it's called I Love You, Now Die, The Commonwealth versus Michelle Carter. So this story is about Michelle Carter and a teenage boy named Conrad Roy III. Michelle Carter and Conrad Roy III fell in love in 2012. They met in Florida while each had been visiting relatives. They lived an hour away from each other and met no more than 5 times in person, but they exchanged thousands of texts over 2 years. This is their story. July 13, 2014. Audio of a police radio dispatcher is played putting out a call that an 18-year-old boy, Conrad Roy, is missing. The dispatcher says the male party is driving a black Ford pickup 250 diesel truck registered to the grandfather. They cut to Conrad Roy's mother, Lynn Roy. She says Conrad was not the type of kid to not come home. She knew something was wrong when she felt a rush go through her body that she had never felt before. She believes it is Conrad passing through her body. Conrad's father, Conrad Jr., says they were sitting on the porch and a friend of the family called the grandfather and told him his truck had caution tape around it at the Fairhaven Kmart. And just to let you know, Conrad's parents are divorced at this time. The family rushes to Kmart to see the black truck surrounded by caution tape. Conrad Jr. is told his son is gone. Conrad's mother, Lynn, cannot bring herself to go to the Kmart. Conrad died, and from here on, when I say Conrad, I am talking about Conrad Jr. the third. I mean, Conrad the third. Conrad died on July 13 from inhaling carbon monoxide. He used a generator to fill the truck with the lethal gas. He left suicide notes for his family. Police detectives wonder why an 18-year-old would take his own life. Conrad's phone was dead. The police detectives discuss whether they should take the phone or not. Knowing that everyone's lives are in their phones, they decide to take it. One of the detectives opens the phone and goes to the texts, and there's only one thread. It is with Michelle Carter. At this time, that name means nothing to police. The detective reads some of the text and finds the text disturbing. Michelle, are you going to do it now? Conrad, I just don't know how to leave them, you know? Michelle, say you're going to the store or something. You're overthinking. Conrad, I know I'm overthinking. I've been overthinking for a while now. Michelle, I know, you just have to do it like you said. Michelle again, are you going to do it now? The detectives know they have to get the DA involved. Detectives travel to Rentham, Massachusetts to interview Michelle Carter at her high school. Michelle is 17 at this time. They tell her they are there to talk to her about Conrad's unfortunate passing and ask her if she had contact up until the day he passed or contact with him that day. And she says, no, I don't think so. They ask her if Conrad told her he was going to do something like that. She says, he was talking about it for a while and he told her that no one would be able to help him. She says she was talking to him the night before on the 12th and that the phone hung up and she didn't know what to do. She had a feeling something like this would happen. The detectives inform her they have a search warrant for her phone and will be taking it right then and there. Massachusetts State Police extract the contents of Michelle's phone. The detectives split up the 60,000 text messages from Michelle's phone. They each read through the thousands of text messages. They reconvene and both say to each other that if not for Michelle, Conrad would be here today. They realize they have something that was criminal. A grand jury returns an indictment for involuntary manslaughter on February 5th, 2015. Michelle is booked and then released on bond the next day. There are thousands of text messages between them. Conrad expressing doubt about killing himself and not wanting to leave his family. Michelle constantly goading him into doing it. She gave him ideas of how to do it: hanging, jumping off a cliff, drinking bleach. Michelle was guiding him all the way to his last breath. It comes out in the trial that at one point when Conrad was in the truck and is feeling the effects of the carbon monoxide, he calls her to tell her he is scared, and he gets out of the truck. She tells him to get back in the truck. Michelle's defense has appealed the grounds for indictment to the Massachusetts Supreme Court. They do not deny the evidence. They do not deny the text messages, etc. Instead, they say even though her conduct might be reprehensible, it is not criminal, and therefore she should not be charged with manslaughter in the connection with Conrad's suicide. Her defense attorney says whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing, the moral thing, the immoral thing, what he's certain of is it wasn't a crime. There's no law that criminalizes encouragement of suicide in Massachusetts. They are going to prosecute her with a homicide. The idea that your speech alone in a way of text messages and words on the phone can equal a manslaughter charge is a dangerous precedent. The court will rule whether there's probable cause for the charge of involuntary manslaughter. The defense makes the argument of the points I just mentioned. One of the judges says there is a manslaughter statute that talks about wanton and reckless conduct causing the death of someone. And at some point, can verbal action become wanton and reckless if it results in someone's death? The court will rule whether there is probable cause for the charge of involuntary manslaughter. The defense makes the argument of the points I just mentioned, and one of the judges says there is a manslaughter statute that talks about wanton and reckless conduct causing the death of someone. And at some point, can verbal action become wanton and reckless if it results in someone's death? The judge then gives the DA an example of like what happened with Conrad. So he says, if I'm in the truck, this is the judge saying, if I'm in the truck and I'm, I've got the carbon monoxide going and I'm killing myself, but then I get out. because I changed my mind or I'm getting scared, whatever the case may be, and someone tells me to get back in. He's he's saying that that's wanton and reckless and resulted in someone's death. But the defense is saying if someone is standing on a bridge and someone says, jump off the bridge or I'll push you, that crosses the line into criminality. But if someone says jump off the bridge, it doesn't matter how often the person says it, it doesn't make it a crime. Others say that Michelle had control over Conrad. She was constantly pressuring him, exerting influence on him. Could her psychological influence over Conrad be considered criminal? The Supreme Judicial Court upholds the indictment. Michelle will go on trial in Taunton Juvenile Court for manslaughter. So June 5th, 2017, the trial begins. At this point, Michelle is 20 years old. She gives up the right to a jury trial, leaving it up to the judge to determine her innocence or guilt. This is called a bench trial. A legal reporter is interviewed about the case, and he says it was a genius defense strategy, especially doing it at the 11th hour, right before the jury was supposed to be selected. He says juries of your peers often don't know the law as much as they know their own emotion and how their own emotions are applied to the facts put in front of them. And sometimes emotions win the day. It comes out in the trial that while Conrad was missing, Michelle she texted Conrad's sister Camden asking if they had found Conrad yet and telling her to stay positive. She doesn't tell Camden that she spoke with Conrad that day. And then the next day on July 14th, after Conrad's death, Michelle texts Camden and offers words of comfort and tells Camden to let her know if there's anything she can help with. She asks Camden if it's going to be a closed casket at the funeral, and Camden tells Michelle Conrad's body was cremated and they're going to spread half the ashes in the ocean and half at her grandparents' house. Michelle then asks if she can have some of Conrad's ashes. At some point, Michelle texts Conrad's mother, Lynn. She says to Lynn things like, we both did what we could. We both tried to save him. And Lynn says she is confused by this. It also comes out in the trial that Michelle had odd obsessive behavior. She didn't have many close friends, and girls from her high school testified that Michelle texted them incessantly. She tried to get close to them and be a part of their lives, but the girls did not reciprocate her need for that friendship. The prosecution says that at the end of the school year, which was June 2014, Michelle then needs to do something to get the girls' attention. So they claim that 2 days before Conrad's death, she starts texting girls that Conrad had gone missing 2 days before his death. Excuse me. The prosecution says she did this for attention. Michelle had told these girls that it's her fault. They offer her comfort and tell her it's not her fault. They tell her that Conrad clearly had issues that she couldn't control. The prosecution says the girls are paying attention to her now, so Michelle now really needs to make this happen. She has to make him kill himself. So she has to be the grieving girlfriend so she can get sympathy and attention. Michelle posted about Conrad incessantly on Facebook. People were messaging her, consoling her. She suddenly became important. Michelle organizes a baseball tournament to raise money for mental health in Conrad's honor. She holds it in Plainville, where she lives, not in Mattapoisett, where Conrad's family and friends live. She's questioned by a friend of Conrad why she's having it there. She says it's because she lives there. The friend goes to the tournament and says Michelle looks very happy. The prosecution again says Michelle is getting the attention she wanted. There's pictures of her happy with these girls, and again, this is for Conrad's suicide, and she's just soaking up
Wow.
all the attention. Michelle was
That's
hated
crazy.
in the public eye. Yeah. Michelle was hated in the public eye. She was portrayed as a sociopath, a monster, a psychopath. But Michelle had serious mental health issues for most of her life. She had a severe eating disorder, and then she started cutting herself. She was incredibly lonely. A psychiatrist that was interviewed says Michelle reached out online to others that were lonely and began talking about these issues, dark issues, and suicide. The defense attorney says the focus was on Michelle and whether Conrad really wanted to die, and the real root cause is unaddressed of why Conrad killed himself. He says to the judge, this case is a suicide case, not a homicide. There is insufficient evidence to a reasonable fact finder to say that Conrad Roy would not have taken his own life on July 13, 2014, but not for Michelle Carter. The prosecution is trying to have it so that the evidence is all about Michelle. There is so much evidence about Conrad Roy and his decisions and his choices. Conrad Roy's Google searches showed hundreds of searches on suicide. Did she actually cause his death? The defense enlists the help of a doctor to assist them in figuring the case out. The doctor was called in to see if Conrad's medication could be a contributing factor to his suicide. The doctor says Conrad was on psychiatric drugs and it was a contributing factor, but not an overwhelming factor. There are messages from Lynn, Conrad's mother, expressing guilt. And so, one point in the documentary, they show one of her texts, and she's expressing guilt that she didn't tell Conrad to stay away from his father's family and that she feels they have blood on their hands. Conrad was reacting to a very unhappy and at times violent divorce. His mother had charged his father with assault, and while Conrad was at his father's one time, his father assaulted him and the police were called. And Conrad's father is interviewed on the documentary about this, and he's very cagey about this incident where they showed Conrad's face beat up. It was cut and bleeding, and he had bruises.
Oh my
And
God.
the interviewer asks him about this, and he's very, like I said, very cagey, and he kind of sloughs it off to, well, it was just a father and son thing. Like that's common and healthy to get in a
Like
fist
it's
fight with your son.
normal.
Yeah, and then he follows it up with saying, "I would do it, I would do it all the same again." So he's really standing his ground on that. Anyway, the doctor says Michelle was on antidepressants too. He says Michelle and Conrad weren't star-crossed, they were drug-crossed. The doctor said Michelle should not have been on Prozac because of her bulimia, and that not long after starting Prozac, she tried to hang herself. In October 2012, Conrad was in the hospital for a serious suicide attempt. This is 2 years before he finally killed himself. So now Conrad and Michelle are texting back and forth about Conrad's despair and how he keeps saying he's going to kill himself. Michelle is concerned and is trying to help him. Conrad tried to kill himself 4 times. The doctor says that Michelle was trying to help Conrad, who was determined to kill himself. He wanted to do it in a way that was swift and making sure he wasn't botching it, and that eventually Michelle is following Conrad's lead into a very dark place. There are many texts from Conrad to Michelle about seeing the devil and constant talk about him killing himself. The doctor says they are both clearly out of their minds. Michelle starts off trying to stop Conrad from killing himself, and this goes on for a year and a half. The doctor sees this as abuse from Conrad toward Michelle, constantly sharing these dark thoughts with her and not telling anyone else but her. He tells her he's going to kill himself, and then the next day he's still alive, and this happens over and over again. What kind of impact must that have had on her? At one point, Conrad tells her the one thing that will make him hate her is if she tells anyone that he's suicidal. So she listens. And at some point, Michelle goes from stopping Conrad from killing himself to helping him. Conrad
That's
tells
so messed
Michelle,
up.
yeah, I mean, but that's quite a head trip, right? Someone tells you
Yeah.
before you hang up the phone, okay, tonight I'm killing myself.
Yeah,
Tonight,
that's
Joy,
crazy.
Joy, tonight I'm killing myself. And the next morning, you get a text from me, hey Joy, how's it? And you're like,
That's nuts.
I thought you were going to kill yourself last night. I'm not trying to make light of it, but imagine me doing
No.
that to you over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's so I it's so hard to conceptualize.
I mean, really, what kind of impact, does that have on a person?
Mhm.
Um, and she's not well either, so she probably at one point was like, the natural reaction is to stop someone from doing it, right? But then after
Mhm.
more than a year of this, you're thinking your mind has got to be affected, and I don't know. I can kind of see how you slide into, well, maybe I'm not doing the right thing by trying to stop him. Maybe he needs help doing this.
but also disbelief that he's never going to do this and we're just kind of playing a game, you know? Remember the good old days when you'd be on the phone with somebody? I don't know if you ever did this and you're like, "You hang up. No, you hang up. No,
Mm-hmm.
you hang up first." And sometimes and at first it was kind of silly, but then you would actually see who would hang up first
Mm-hmm.
because you just went back and forth. And I know that people joke around about it in movies and in books, but the fact of the matter is that, there's this disbelief, like, they've been kind of playing this game with each other, like cat and mouse, and nobody, the other person is actually going to go through with anything.
Yeah, and yeah, and they both weren't in a good place. I mean,
Mhm.
it was just bad. You want to talk about the perfect storm. Um, and at one point, Conrad tells Michelle that his mother saw his computer where he had a page up on ways to kill himself. He tells Michelle his mother saw it and she didn't do anything about it. And remember, he tried to kill himself 4 times. So his mother knew of his suicidal ideations, and I am not blaming her in any way. I'm just stating the facts. The doctor feels the prosecution is making Michelle out to be a witch, when in fact she is involuntarily intoxicated from antidepressants. He feels Michelle is not formulating criminal intent, but she believes she is going to help Conrad. He says Michelle finally finds a way to help. On July 12th, she asks him if he is going to do it that day, and he says he is. They discuss what time of day he should do it, and she tells him he should drive his truck somewhere. And Conrad is berating himself, questioning why he isn't strong enough to do this. And Michelle tells him not to overthink it. He tells her he's leaving to go to the parking lot, and she's offering him support. Like some people might look at it as goading. She might be thinking that she's actually helping him. And at 6:28 p.m., Conrad calls Michelle and they speak for 45 minutes. At 7:12 p.m., Michelle calls Conrad and they speak for another 47 minutes. And that is the last phone call Conrad will make. The relationship, if you want to call it that, between Michelle and Conrad was very, very unhealthy. You have two people with mental issues. Michelle had a fascination with the TV show Glee, and she tried to even pattern her life after the one of the lead actresses, Leah Michelle, whom she had an obsession with. And I don't know if you remember, but Leah Michelle was going out with one of the other actors on Glee, Corey Monteith, and then he died of a drug overdose. And
Mhm.
Michelle is almost like this. She can't decipher what's Leah's life and hers. I mean, it's really this obsession is
Interesting.
beyond. Yeah. There's even a point where Michelle says that she was in love with a female friend and that the friend stopped communicating with her. A reporter asked the friend what happened. The friend said Michelle was very disturbed and that nothing ever happened between them. And Conrad, getting back to the doctor saying that what some of what Conrad did was abuse um, to Michelle. He's a little mean to her at times. He's not. I'm not disparaging the person that died, but he was a real person. Is not this. We're just talking about Conrad and then this crazy girl who made him kill himself. He.
Right.
They were teenagers. She was 7 when they first met. She was 15, and he was why can't I do math? He was 16. She was 15, he was
Mhm.
16. And then when he died, he was 18, she was 17. So she was 15 when she meets him, and he was a teenager, and he was a little mean to her at times. Um, so it's not cut and dry, it's not. It's really not that simple.
Mhm.
June 16, 2017, there's a verdict. And when the judge is ready to give his verdict, he starts by saying the law does not require an explanation for a verdict, but he feels in this case an explanation is warranted because the public is so divided on this. Um, so he says that roughly the period of June 19, 2014, through the ending of the text messages between Michelle and Conrad on July 12, 2014, that's the day of the suicide. So in the beginning, I said that it happened on July 13th. That was when his body was found. So you'll find conflict. They'll interchange July 12th and July 13th because July 12th is the evening that he went to the parking lot, but he wasn't found till the 13th. So it'll interchange. He killed himself on the 12th or the 13th. But so the judge has divided the evidence in order for him to come to a verdict. He's divided it into components. And so that period of June 29 to July 12th is his first component. And then immediately after Conrad is found on the 13th. So the day of the suicide to the day when he's found, that's the second component. He says the Commonwealth has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the actions taken by Michelle for the first period, June 29, 2014 to July 12, 2014, constituted wanton and reckless conduct by her and the serious disregard for the well-being of Mr. Roy. The Commonwealth has not proven as to that time period that her wanton and reckless behavior caused Conrad's death. So they're showing Michelle and her defense attorney, and he's got his arm wrapped around her, and you can see the hope in their faces. Okay, he's saying that the Commonwealth has not proven that her wanton and reckless behavior caused his death. He goes on to say Conrad was struggling with his issues and took significant actions of his own. He secured the generator, he secured the water pump, he researched how to fix the generator, he located his vehicle in an unnoticeable area and commenced his attempt by starting the pump. And then he says, however, and it's like the air is just sucked out of the courtroom. He says, however, Conrad breaks that chain of self-causation by exiting the vehicle. He takes himself out of the toxic environment that it has become. When Michelle realizes that Conrad has exited the truck, she instructs him to get back into the truck, which she has reason to know it is or is becoming a toxic environment inconsistent with human life. And this court finds where one's action creates a life-threatening risk to another, there is a duty to alleviate the risk. The reckless failure to fulfill this duty can result in a charge of manslaughter. Knowing that Conrad is in the truck, knowing the condition of the truck, Michelle takes no action in the furtherance of the duty that she has created by instructing Conrad to get back in the truck. Consequently, this court has found that the Commonwealth has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Michelle's actions also her actions, also her failure to act where she had a self-created duty to Conrad, constituted each and all wanton and reckless conduct. And this court further finds that the Commonwealth has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that said conduct caused the death of Conrad. And he tells her to stand, and he says, this court, having reviewed the evidence and applied the law thereto, now finds you guilty on the indictment charging you with the involuntary manslaughter of Conrad Roy III. Michelle faced a maximum of 20 years in prison, and her father writes a letter to the judge, and in it he says he is convinced that the medication she was taking affected her mental state, which made it difficult for her to distinguish between right and wrong, and he is also 100% sure she was only trying to do what in her mind was right for Conrad. Michelle is sentenced to 2.5 years in a house of correction. The defense files a motion to stay the execution of the sentence. They are requesting that the prison sentence be delayed until the appeals process is complete, and the judge grants this stay. Michelle is set free until her appeals process is complete. And then on February 11, 2019, after a year and a half, Michelle learns her appeal has been denied. The judge says he revokes the stay of sentence, and she's taken into custody immediately. And then Michelle spends 15 months in prison for the death of Conrad Roy. She was released in 2020. What comes out in the documentary is that when Michelle at one point had texted one of the girls, who was really not one of her friends, that she could have stopped Conroy from killing himself. She tells her that at one point Conrad got out of the truck and she told him the words were, I told him to get back in the fucking truck. The problem is there is no evidence. There's no recording of her saying this. And her pattern has been to lie or exaggerate to get attention. The world believes that Michelle texted him to get back in the truck, but that was an unsubstantiated rumor that everyone just took as fact. No evidence of this was ever found on hers or Conrad's phone. It was never proven in court that Michelle did in fact say this to him. And there are many, many people who, for whatever reason, make false confessions to crimes. And when law enforcement can't find evidence to back up their confession, they're released. So it's incredible. Well, this is my opinion. It's kind of incredible to me that they took it on her word. There's no other evidence. She just told a friend, I told him to get back in the truck. There are those two phone calls that I mentioned, and there's no there's no short phone call of, after that, of him, which would have indicated him, it would have corroborated him getting out and calling her and saying, I'm getting scared. So that's very curious because there's no text. There's nothing to prove that he actually got out of the truck at one point and that she actually told him to get back. Um, and one of the things that one of the reporters said that I thought was very interesting was that he said the biggest mystery of the story is not why Michelle did what she did, but what she thought she was doing. And then, in one point of the documentary, Conrad's father is asked by the interviewer, what caused Conrad's death? And he pauses for a very long time and he answers, I would say it's Michelle Carter. So, what do you think?
Well, it's so interesting. I will say this. Obviously, the both the young man and the young woman had this fascination with suicide, and he had attempted 4 suicides prior to this successful suicide attempt.
Mm-hmm,
Um, I think that his relationship with her was very toxic, and I think that her relationship with him was very toxic, and I think they had a lot of very unhealthy behavior. Um, but don't think she I don't think she did anything to stop his, but I don't think she could have done anything to stop his suicide attempt. I think he would have found a way to do it uh, with or without her.
yep. And remember, the four times were prior to meeting her. So,
Right. And I will say also, I mean, we have so much evidence now that, we didn't have. I mean, I think about like the people, men who've been let out of prison on rape charges when they went back and found that their DNA wasn't anywhere linked to the,
mm-hmm,
investigation.
mm-hmm,
And, you now we have like the Google searches and we have the text messages and we have phone conversations and we have so much more. Like we have surveillance camera footage. We have so much more stuff. You go and buy gas and they have you on camera. You
mm-hmm,
go and buy a pack of gum. You stop and use a public restroom at Target. I mean, I think about the Gabby Petito case and just like they have them shopping at Whole Foods.
mm-hmm,
So it's like all the places that you go, I mean, there's so much more uh evidentiary, stuff and every place you enter and so all the things you look at. And so I think about that. I mean, yeah, she had some serious issues and he did too. But they were both in crisis. I guess,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
maybe she is getting help now and is gonna, sort through this and come out of it maybe in a better mental space. And unfortunately, didn't he's not gonna have that chance.
Yeah. Well, I have a very strong opinion on this. And it might not be a popular one to our listeners, but I have to voice it. Um, I think that it was a real travesty that she was charged because I completely agree with the defense attorney when he says there's a difference between saying, uh, jump off the cliff, jump off the cliff, jump off the cliff, do it right now, jump off the cliff, versus jump off the cliff or I'm going to push you off. I
Right.
think that there is a complete difference. Also, just to touch on what you just said about, so we have cameras everywhere. There's
Mhm.
a really good series called, I think it's Web of Lies, but every week they showcase or talk about a different crime that was solved through the security cameras on different buildings. Like they tracked, oh, that one that we talked about that girl who went running. There's they can find from all the different buildings security cameras where that person went, what their path was, and then they see a car following. So there's a lot of
Oh,
evidence. And
interesting.
so my point in this is there was no evidence that she told him that. And
Mhm.
you might say, well, but she said it. Well, I go again, I circle back to people confessing. There's a guy that was in Thailand that confessed to the John Benet Ramsey murder, and they didn't have any evidence, so
Mhm.
they just like said, he was some kook, or I don't know if they want
Right.
fame from it or whatever. So you can't even say that. Well, she said that, but didn't she lie and exaggerate a lot as well? So
Yeah.
no one, I maybe they did, you know, but I feel like, did they ever, except for the doctor that was hired to, speak on her behalf, kind of, for speak for the defense, did anyone ever investigate that? Did anyone ever look into whether she really said that? I feel like everyone wanted someone to blame, and it was so easy to make it a headline. 18-year-old kills himself because girlfriend forced him to.
Yeah.
They make it like a headline, but in
It's
fact it
very
was,
sensational.
yeah, it's exactly. They made, and like the defense attorney said, I really liked this defense attorney. If I need a defense attorney, God, I would hire him, because he said that she was made out to be this witch with magical powers. This kid had many, many mental health issues, and I would like to argue that a lot of them came from his family. I'm not trying to blame them, but
Yeah.
they do
I have
have.
to say I have to say that what we know about, verbal, physical, emotional violence perpetrated on children and the ramifications of that. I mean, when you described like what he looked like after he'd been beaten up by his dad, I was just like, that was so cringing. I was cringy to even hear that. Um, I mean, and yeah, and then the dad saying that that was just an altercation between father and son. I'm sorry.
No, he made it. He tried
That's
to normalize
so
it.
yeah,
It
that's so alarming.
it was so uncomfortable. Well, to me, the long pause he took before he said, when he was asked what caused Conrad's death. Um, Sorry, actually, when he was asked about that fight with his son, he took a long pause, and that said it all to me. That said it all to me, because he had to gather his
Right.
thoughts.
You also said that the parents had, split up because of abuse. I mean, you think
Hmm.
about abuse that this child has watched day in and day out as a small child growing. I just want to say that as a small child, to that kind of abuse between his parents, of course, it's going to take its toll on his mental.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and not only did he witness it, he was the victim of it too, directly.
Mhm.
So I just have
Just
a.
so sad.
It is very sad for all of them. I really truly will. I just have a very black and white opinion on this, that it was not criminal on her part. If she said that, I want to say that. If she told him to get back in the truck, it's not criminal. I don't think it's criminal. It's immoral. That was a pretty shitty thing to do if she did, in fact, do that. But was it criminal, really? Like, the there's so many cases of these teenagers, or not even teenagers. Like, I think there was a boy who was 11 or 9 who are killing themselves because of bullying from the kids at school. And I know there was one very sad story where the girl got off the bus. Of course, she was being harassed on the school bus, and she gets off, and one of the other girls leans out the window and says, "Go kill yourself." And so
Whoa.
she walked in the house and she hung herself. So what happened to that girl? Why wasn't she brought up on criminal charges? Because
Right.
it's not that simple, right? It's not that simple. And I truly believe it's different than threatening someone and saying, if you don't uh, jump off the cliff, I'm going to push you. It's just I feel like the public can have an influence on the court, and it was so it was awful. It was awful. If in fact she said that to him, it was terrible. It was just like the girl yelling, "Go kill yourself."
Right.
It was terrible. And I think the public can affect, just like that reporter saying that it's smart not to have a jury trial because they're going to come in with their emotions, right? And
Right.
they want to make someone responsible for this kid killing himself. But let's remember, he killed himself. Um,
Right.
so I feel like the judge and this whole judicial system was like, yeah, it was pretty fucked up for her to do that. We got to hold her accountable, or people are not gonna blah blah blah. And I'm just like, it's not. I don't. I just really felt like it was not right. And I watched. They showed the trial, and I see the family sitting in the gallery right behind. In the first row. And I'm looking at Conrad's family, and they're all crying and hugging each other and grieving. And I get it. Of course, I get it. But they're trying to make Michelle the villain. And I look at them and I look at that group of people and I say, what hand did you have in this? You're trying to bring down this 17-year-old girl. What
Mm.
because you had Conrad all that time until 17. Oh, until 18. He was 18. Michelle was in his life for
Right.
2 years.
Mhm.
So, you do the math. I mean, I hardly think that in 2 years, you know what I mean? There was a lot more there. And like I had described
Yeah.
it before, I feel like the family is building this bomb. They put in the fuse and they have this bomb that's unlit. And then Michelle came along at the end and maybe she lit the fuse, but she didn't create that bomb. So I'm very, very sad. When I watched it again, I told you I was very, very upset watching her being um, found guilty. It really upset
Mhm.
me. It really upset me because I felt like it was such an injustice. Um, oh
Well,
man, if
the good news is she only had to serve a very short amount of time incarcerated,
yeah, but it's gonna
and
affect her for the rest of her
it
life.
no, I mean, the last she got out in 2020, it's 2023. I haven't seen about her using this to, go to school, get a career, maybe put this behind her, maybe build a life outside of this. Maybe she's working on her mental health. I mean, one can hope that, there's a lot of life lessons that you can take away from this. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah, I do, but I think it's it's not something. It's part of your life now, and I don't think it
Right.
was right. I just really don't think it was right. And I know people are going to
No.
disagree because they wanted somebody to hate and they wanted somebody to blame, and
Hmm.
I just don't think it was right that she was brought up on criminal charges. Yeah, if there was a court for immoral behavior and just really
Right.
shitty behavior. Can you imagine if we had a court for assholes? Woohoo! You know what I mean? Like
God. First of all, I mean, there it would. they would have to open up like extra courts because
Yeah, that's what.
uh they would be like it would be like never ending cases.
Yeah, there's, are we going to have courts for bad behavior? I mean, just bad
Mm-mm,
behavior, not being criminal. If you, that's maybe what, that's the worst that she did. Was, I don't know.
mm-mm.
That's how I feel. But what do you guys think? You know, um, there's so much out there. You don't even have to watch this 2.5 hour documentary. You can just Google it and read about it. Or I told you, but if you want to watch the documentary and you don't have HBO or whatever other channel you said it was on, or streaming platform, it is on YouTube. Um, but yeah, I'd really like to hear what people think.
Yeah, go out there and give it a watch, and then hit us up on Spotify and let us know what you think.
Yep. Yep.
Well,
Well,
so you know what is a real crime?
what's that, Joy?
That we're out of time.
Yeah, that's right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.